In today's video, CNN confirms that Lisa Cook is in trouble
to
for the
file a
mortgage
brief.
fraud
The information
allegations.
will
Secondly, RFK Jr. fired the CDC director, and now people are losing their mind. And finally, Mayor Brandon Johnson just signed an executive action to prevent his agencies from working with the Trump administration. And all these videos will show you what both sides are saying and then give you the bottom line.
A federal judge is asking for more information in a legal showdown involving this week's firing of a Federal Reserve governor by President Trump. A Tuesday deadline is now set for defense attorneys of Lisa Cook to file a brief. The information will be used to decide whether to issue a temporary order against her firing. The legal battle could significantly reshape the Fed's longstanding political independence.
Now, what I find to be interesting about all this is the judge that's actually presiding over this case. Her name is Gia Cobb, and she just so happens to be the sorority sister of this particular Fed chair governor who has been relieved of her duties. Supposedly, they served in Delta Sigma Theta sorority, and people are calling for the judge to recuse herself. But we know that's not going to happen. And the other interesting thing is you have a legal analyst on CNN admitting that, hey, the evidence against Lisa Cook, it's no joke. It's a serious thing. Take a listen.
It also is true that there is some suspicious activity here that's really problematic by Lisa Cook. Let me just sort of try to bottom line it. There's 3 properties, okay? Within a 2-week stretch, she gets a mortgage on a place in Michigan and says that's her principal residence. 2 weeks later, she gets a mortgage on a place in Atlanta, in Georgia, and says that's her primary residence. And now there's a 3rd place in Cambridge that she said was her secondary residence, but she's actually renting it out. Now, why would someone do all this? Because you get better interest rates, because you get better tax benefits. That can be worth tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars. Thus far, and I find this really notable, in the briefs that have been submitted by Lisa Cook's lawyers, she was the plaintiff here. She filed the opening brief. No explanation of what she did, how this happened. There's some reference to maybe it's a clerical error. Today in court, Abby Lowell, very good lawyer, again, no explanation of how this happened. And the claim that this might be clerical error or just a mistake, that's not going to fly because Lisa Cook is one of the most established, accomplished financial and economic experts in this country. And this is not just like any old person. Look, when you do a mortgage, there's all sorts of paperwork flying and terms, and maybe you can get confused or lost. I don't know if you're going to buy that from Lisa Cook. But the bottom line question, as Caitlin just said, is who has to show what here? I think that the allegations on their face could be enough for a judge to say, look, I'm going to defer to the president on cause.
Okay, well, just a few things here. Number one, and this is just to be fair, we know exactly what President Trump is doing here, okay? They are finding dirt on people who are within the Fed because he wants to build leverage to force their hand in lowering the interest rates. Now, people may not like it. They may call him a bully for it. They may say this is unconstitutional, which it's not. It doesn't matter. This is politics. And he's not doing anything that we haven't seen before, okay? Now, he may be doing it publicly by posting on Truth Social exactly what he's going to do. But it's no different than what politicians have been doing for quite some time now, which is to apply pressure to the Fed to lower interest rates. And ultimately, the only person that's actually getting hurt in this entire process is the American citizen. Those people out there that are truly wanting to buy a home right now, interest rates are affecting their decision-making to do so. We know that because there are more sellers than there are buyers at this current moment.
Right, but I think Lisa Cook has shown that she's using her position for personal gain. You know, she's lied. The question is whether or not she's committed something that would be arbitrary and capricious. Maybe that's the standard. They're actually looking for a standard right now legally. And that could be a standard that could remove her. And that would be up to a judicial decision right now because she's got an attorney, challenging this. But I think President Trump is just trying to get good people in government to represent us. We're tired of bureaucrats who take advantage of the system, and especially people that can't even uphold the law, who are now enforcing the law against others.
Now, that was Representative Tini, and I believe her stance or perspective represents how most people think if you lean right in your political views. Now, for people who lean left and have Trump derangement syndrome, here is Maxine Waters giving us the rundown and what they believe is going on here, including this idea that the cabinet needs to invoke the 25th Amendment and remove President Trump. for making decisions like these. Take a look.
As far as I'm concerned, we have to move very aggressively. It is not about, lingering and trying to think that maybe the courts will help us. I want, even though I know it may not happen, the cabinet that he's appointed, a bunch of his sycophants who probably won't do what I would recommend. It is time to call for Article 25 of the Constitution of the United States of America to determine his unfitness, to determine that something's wrong with this president. And I would suggest that we move very aggressively to talk about the danger to this country and to our democracy and not play around with this, because this is absolutely one of the most destructive things that this president could do.
Congresswoman Wasserman Schultz, I mean, your take on this, because I think it's jarring to hear Congresswoman Waters say it's time for the 25th Amendment. But, I mean, presidents have been impeached for much less.
This is true.
Yeah, so let me go down the list, and I'm not insulting your intelligence. I just want to set the record straight because people literally eat that up, okay? She just said that people have been impeached for less. So she's comparing the firing of Lisa Cook to impeachments. So you're telling me Richard Nixon and what he did is lesser than President Trump firing Lisa Cook. What Bill Clinton did is lesser than firing Lisa Cook, right? I mean, is that what you're saying? Now, maybe where she's right is this sham impeachment that they did on President Trump in his first term, where that was definitely lesser than firing Lisa Cook. So I don't know why they tend to make those statements, but it really is troubling because these are supposed to be people who know what they're talking about, and clearly she doesn't. Now, here is another dissenting view from Debbie Schultz, and she's just really unhinged, especially as it pertains to President Trump. And here's what she had to say.
Trump is doing this pure and simple because he has not been able to strong arm the Federal Reserve into lowering interest rates. And we already have a fragile economy. We already see the tariffs that he's been imposing dramatically increasing prices. Today, we heard that the huge tariffs that previously lower priced items coming from overseas were going to be exempt from, now they will be imposed. So the impact on our buying power and the impact on our economy when it comes to our purchasing power is going to be dramatically impacted.
Yeah, see, this image right here on the screen represents exactly what Democrats want to tell their viewers and the argument they're overall making. They're trying to compare the prices of today to the prices under Joe Biden. But what they won't do is compare the prices under Joe Biden to the prices under the first Trump administration, because that would obviously show that the country experienced a high record of inflation. Now, here's the other thing about this entire subject, and it's really the brutal truth that both sides don't want to admit, and that is once you have record inflation, grocery prices in particular don't come down. Now, you might see a decrease if in the context of egg prices, right? Because those spiked due to supply and demand. But overall, across the board, prices do not decrease for consumer products once inflation has set in. Now, you'll see prices change when it comes to electricity and fuel, but that does not apply to grocery prices. And that's just the brutal truth that people need to understand. All right, so allow me to share a quick message from today's sponsor, Bearskin. Yes, it is summertime right now, but let's not forget winter will come, and the last thing you need is a hoodie that sucks. It's a great time to do your winter shopping, which is why most people are smart by locking in their 60% off with Bearskin. What is Bearskin exactly? It's what I'm wearing right now. It's a hoodie that is built like a tank, 340 GSM micro fleece, 10 pockets with a clean, rugged fit that looks awesome. As you guys can see, I look great, right? I mean, come on. Plus, it zips right into a heavy storm rain jacket to become 100% waterproof when you need it. So when it turns cold, wet, or rainy, you're not scrambling last minute. Plus, you're going to get free U.S. shipping, fast delivery, and your winter gear already locked in. So get your Bearskin today by texting my name, Devori, to 369 36912. Again, text my name Devori to 36912 to get 60% off. They'll send you a link so you could check out on your own time. Once again, text my name Devori to 36912. Okay, now we go to our other major story, and that is RFK Jr. firing the CDC director. This actually led to multiple staffers who have worked in the agency for quite some time, including high-level officials, walking out on the CDC. They've accused the Trump administration of politicizing the agency and continue to bash RFK Jr.'s decision-making. Take a look.
Independent Senator Bernie Sanders is now joining calls for RFK Jr. to resign. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer is asking President Trump to fire the Health and Human Services Secretary after the administration fired CDC Director Susan Menares. The New York Democrat releasing a statement saying that the president made a mistake hiring RFK Jr. and must fire him immediately. Schumer went on to call RFK Jr. stubborn and pig-headed, and that, quote, conspiracy-based attacks on proven science are going to make many more people sick and cause more death. Well, Menares went head-to-head with the HHS secretary over the decision to remove approval of COVID-19 vaccinations. Her ousting led to several high-profile officials leaving the department, and the Senate confirmed Menares in vote along party lines, becoming the CDC director just back in July.
Now, obviously, this is huge news when the CDC director gets fired and other high-profile people in the leadership leave the agency. Now, as you guys know, just like all the stories that are being reported by mainstream media, they're not telling you the full story. Now, take a look at this. This is from Callie Means, posted late last night. There is a memo being circulated among career staffers at HHS. It outlines specific steps to subvert the agenda of President Trump and Secretary Kennedy, the nation's two most popular public leaders. Voters overwhelmingly elected President Trump to protect kids, but now the media is holding up quote-unquote experts at the CDC who say it is anti-scientific to use the word mother, defend two-year-old school lockdowns, herald abortions and smaller family sizes as public health miracles, and demand mandated COVID vaccinations for every 6-month-old in America. Make no mistake, the only specific anti-science move that these scientists accuse Secretary Kennedy of making is taking the COVID vaccine off the CDC schedule, a move 95% of parents and 85% of healthcare workers actually agree with.
Like, science is not perfect. And public policy is not perfect. And any of us who've served in government know you make mistakes. You don't get it right. This is not, a heavenly mandate. This is human beings. People were scared during that pandemic. There were bodies lying on the streets of New York. People were filling up freezers of human bodies. And there was an overreaction. And it did wind up hurting a lot of kids. But that's not politicized. That's not the liberals had some agenda they wanted to ruin America with. The people made mistakes. I wish progressives would come forward and say we made mistakes and acknowledge that the overreaction hurt children. But to then turn around and say because mistakes were made, it's all political, everything's political, so now we can be political in the other way blatantly, I think is a mistake.
Okay, well, that's Van Jones' opinion, and I think what he is saying is a mistake. You cannot demand that the American people trust experts who clearly lied to us, manipulated the information, in some cases weaponized the information to not only scare people, but force people to do things they were not comfortable in doing. And one of the most craziest things out of COVID was this bogus 6 feet social distancing policy that was never based in any science and was just made up. But they want us to trust the experts. I don't know how that works exactly. Now, what's happening here over the past few days, because the CDC director was fired by RFK Jr., multiple people have walked out, including staffers, and one of the individuals has been making the rounds on mainstream media, particularly networks that lean left, to bash RFK Jr., cast doubt on RFK Jr., and undermine the entire Trump administration. Take a look.
Dr. Daskalakis, I want to drill down into the real-life impacts of a CDC led by someone who is not a doctor, and an HHS led by someone who was also not a doctor and has no background and seems to have disdain for the work that many of you do. What is the real life impacts for the American people that are watching? What should they be looking out for, and how does this change their lives?
Yeah, no, so I think that it means a couple of things. There are people who know how to run organizations. If they listen to experts within the organization, they're going to do just fine. If I became the CEO of a hedge fund tomorrow and I had the right economists, the right business people below me, I run big organizations. I could do it. That means I'd have to listen to them. So, these folks, right, they have the experience to run an organization, it seems. But if they don't listen to their experts, they're flying blind, or they're answering to other people who are briefing them and giving information to influence what they're doing that's not based in science. I've never briefed the secretary. I've never met the man. He talks about measles. I don't know where he knows anything about measles except for the rhetoric that he's been putting forward for 20 years. I don't know who his counselors are. That's not how it should work in the U.S. And people, that's red flag, big alarm. They're not listening to any science. They're using half-truths to change what's going to happen with policy. And that you will not be able to get vaccines for your kids.
Well, obviously, you will be able to get vaccines for your children. You've been getting vaccines for your children, especially if your child goes to a public school. It's required to receive vaccines. So I don't know why he would make that statement unless his whole goal is to continue to scare people, which is really the way that MSDNC operates. And listen, you can criticize RFK Jr. all day long, but what you cannot criticize is the fact and the results that show that the leadership of the CDC, the leadership of the FDA, the leadership of HHS and NIH, all of them lied to the American people, especially during COVID. And they've been lying to the American people. This is no different than when the federal government tried to convince people that smoking cigarettes was a healthy thing to do. Okay? That's our history as a country. So excuse me if I don't trust what the experts say. Now, here's the FDA commissioner of today and what he believes the CDC really needs in a leader. Take a look.
CDC needs an extremely strong leader. It's a broken agency. This is an agency that with 20,000 employees could not generate a website to track the COVID virus. It was eventually created by one Johns Hopkins grad student. He created a COVID website that the world used. And it's not just one or two mishaps at the CDC. Culturally, operationally, scientifically, they've lost their mission. They propagate dogma. They pushed cloth masks on toddlers for 3 years. They insisted schools shut out children for nearly 2 years using a phony pseudoscience document that the teachers union edited, and those edits appeared in the final document. They made up 6 feet. They pushed vaccine boosters in young, healthy people. So the CDC needs a realignment, and it needs an extremely strong leader.
Yeah, let me add on to what he was saying. I believe what is disturbing is that the media, Democrats, and particularly these people who continue to rage against RFK Jr., is that it's not really RFK Jr. coming up with these ideas. He's representing parents, children, families who have been complaining about the system, who've been complaining about vaccines, who's been complaining about pesticides, complaining about the food, and nobody has been listening until RFK Jr. has been put in the position he was put in thanks to his collaboration with President Trump. And now they finally feel like they have someone who's going to listen. And again, you could criticize them. That's definitely fine. But let's give them an opportunity to do what they were elected to do. And just maybe the upside here is things will change for the better. And the worst case scenario is nothing will change and things will continue to be worse for public health. So I don't really see the risk here. Now, here's what Stephen Miller had to say about the CDC yesterday.
As we know, the CDC's credibility was shattered during the COVID era. This is now widely understood and widely acknowledged. And CDC used to be, of course, seen widely around the world as a premier health agency. And much of the world discovered in the last few years that CDC was actually staffed by a lot of very partisan, very political bureaucrats who weren't at all concerned about public health and weren't actually very knowledgeable about public health. And we are working hard. And more importantly, Secretary Kennedy, one of the world's foremost voices, advocates, and experts on public health, is working hard to restore the credibility and the integrity of CDC as a scientific organization committed to the scientific method and getting to the root causes of the public health epidemic in this country. there's one chronic illness after another where we have seen incidences and rates in the Western world in general, in America in particular, skyrocket over recent decades and years, both childhood illnesses and adult illnesses. And we know that the drivers of these chronic illnesses are things that can be explained both through environmental factors, both through pharmacological factors, as well as other things that impact public health and well-being. But there has been no serious effort until Secretary Kennedy came along to deal with these systemic root drivers of chronic health. And it's an honor to be able to work with Secretary Kennedy as he tackles these issues on behalf of President Trump.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, guys, we have to let the results do the talking and not get wrapped up in a lot of political rhetoric. And I wish that's the way the media would report the news, but they just don't do it. Now we're on to our next story, and this just happened moments ago. Mayor Brandon Johnson just signed an executive action that prevents local law enforcement agencies, including all agencies under the city's control, to find every resource to fight against the Trump administration, and it also prevents them from working with National Guard, ICE agents, and federal authorities to crack down on crime. I know he's that delusional. Take a look.
We have received credible reports that we have days, not weeks, before our city sees some type of militarized activity by the federal government. It is unclear at this time what that will look like exactly. We may see militarized immigration enforcement. We may also see National Guard troops. We may even see active duty military and armed vehicles in our streets. We have not called for this. Our people have not asked for this. But nevertheless, we find ourselves having to respond to this. I'm signing an executive order today that will launch the Protecting Chicago initiative. This is a project that builds on the months of preparation that we have done, that has led up to this very moment. Protecting Chicago will ensure that every Chicagoan knows their rights, that every single family is prepared, and every part of city government is directed to protect the people of Chicago from federal action. This sweeping executive order directs our Department of Law to pursue any and every legal mechanism to hold this administration accountable for violating the rights of Chicagoans. This order affirms that the Chicago Police Department will not collaborate with military personnel on police patrols or civil immigration enforcement.
Well, someone whose approval rating is at 7%, even under 20%, depending on what poll you look at, I would argue that he's the one violating the rights of people who live in Chicago. He's been selling out the people of Chicago for illegal aliens. He's not actually doing the job that they elected him to do. He's worse than Lori Lightfoot, and she was terrible as a mayor. So listen, he could say all he wants. He could sign these executive actions just like Karen Bass. It's not going to stop the federal government from doing what they are legally allowed to do, particularly the president. Now, just so you guys understand, this isn't just my opinion and why this is a good idea from the administration. Let's just look at the results again.
Here's why Democrat cities are plagued by violence should consider getting on board. If you look here at Washington, D.C. at a 2-week period this year compared to last year, property crime is down 20%. But the biggest thing are all of the violent crimes, often including robbery, which is down 60%. Homicides are down 71% from last year over this exact same period of time. Assaults with a dangerous weapon, down 10%. Yet, if you listen to Democrats, they don't care about those statistics. They try to tell you that crime is not surging in their localities. But if you look at Oakland, California is rated number 2, the most dangerous place in the United States. Boston, Massachusetts has seen a 67% increase in homicides year to date from last year to this year. In Chicago, a 78% increase in motor vehicle theft from 2021 to 2025.
Now, the governor of one of those states that you saw on the screen, J.B. Pritzker, whose state is responsible for almost 78% of an increase in carjackings over the past 4 years, he doesn't really care about crime himself either. Now, he's out there trying to say that President Trump isn't really doing this to keep Americans safe. He just wants to have control. Well, he is the president of the United States. They do have some level of control, right? And they are ultimately responsible for what happens to our country. And the brutal truth is Congress is the one that really should get all the smoke, but they don't. It's really the president because he's more of a figurehead if you think about it. But what's different about President Trump is he's not just a figurehead. He's actually making things happen. He's taking action, and it pisses Democrats off even more. And that's exactly why J.B. Pritzker went and did an interview with his usual delusional takes and said this.
He has other aims other than fighting crime. That's the first thing they should understand. The second is it's an attack on the American people by the President of the United States. Now, he may disagree with a state that didn't vote for him, but should he be sending troops in? No.
You said he has other aims. What are the other aims?
The other aims are that he'd like to stop the elections in 2026 or, frankly, take control of those elections.
So I just find it interesting that when President Trump brings up elections, they lose all consciousness. But when they do, it's perfectly fine. This guy is purely delusional. He's loony. So they believe that the president's going to steal the 2026 midterm election, and then he's going to try to stay in power in 2028. What data, what fact, what proof, what video or audio tape supports that exact statement? None. It's just something that they say to scare their base into thinking the way they want them to think. Now, of course, I have an opposite view to what J.B. Pritzker had to say from this representative. Take a look.
I have to echo the sentiment of my colleague from California. We have a sanctuary state, sanctuary cities. I have the entire northern border of New York in my district, pretty much. And Tom Homan, who you just showed a clip of, actually is a resident of my district who they torment at his home, even though he's not there, on a weekly basis. But, Kathy Hochul already brought in the National Guard because we had 2 prisons in New York State that were overrun and taken over by inmates. How incredibly dangerous is that? Not just for the people and the people that live in New York, for the inmates and for everyone. And so bringing the National Guard in to provide some order, they can also provide the logistics that's needed. They also, provide a deterrent factor, just seeing people in uniform that are friendly and trying to keep the streets clean. Businesses can operate, families can feel safe, their kids can get to school. You don't have to worry about illegal immigrants stopping your kids on the school bus, which, by the way, I've got tapes coming from people in my northern border who've seen, illegal immigrants stopping school buses. I mean, this is what reality is in states like New York and California. And I think it would be welcomed by the people, especially upstate and New York City. You heard the same sentiment that you just saw from the people in Chicago. They want law and order. That's the essence of a free society.
Yeah, so the fact that Mayor Brandon Johnson and the governor continue to dig in and argue against actually making their cities safer by saying what President Trump is doing is an attack on American citizens. I find that interesting. No, the attack on American citizens have come at the hands of criminals, and some of these criminals are illegal aliens, but they have nothing to say that. Isn't it interesting? They have yet to truly acknowledge in a press conference the damage illegal aliens have done to their city. I just find that to be interesting. Now, let's get your guys' response in the comment section below. First, what is your take on Mayor Brandon Johnson signing this executive action to pretty much tell his local law enforcement agencies, the police department, the sheriff's department, any other agency for that matter, to use resources to fight against the Trump administration? What do you make of that? Secondly, do you agree with RFK's decision to fire the director of the CDC, including the people who are now walking out on the CDC because they believe the Trump administration has politicized the agency? Do you buy into that? If you don't, please explain why. Finally, Lisa Cook, the Fed chair governor who is suing President Trump because she was fired over mortgage fraud. She doesn't even deny the allegations. Do you believe she deserved to be fired? Let me know your thoughts about everything we discuss in this video in the comments section below. Now, in our next video, there was a shocking ruling from the Federal Appeals Court in regards to President Trump and his tariffs, including Gavin Newsom once again attacking Speaker Johnson. He's continuing to get desperate in his attempts to get attention. So if you miss out on those stories and more from yesterday, all you have to do is click on that video because it's coming up right now.